Hello everyone, and welcome to the final 250 days of our Oxygen Not Included journey. Most of you probably haven't seen the first 750 days, so let me catch you all up to speed. Oxygen Not Included is a game where you are the manager of a space colony populated by dupes. These dupes share a grand total of 2 brain cells between all of them. Rowan is a special case though. He's been here since day 1, does his tasks quickly, always takes action during a crisis, and is the reason why I say the dupes have 2 brain cells instead of 0. The rest of the dupes sink to the bottom of bodies of water, glitch into steam engines through magic, or go skinny dipping in crude oil. It has been my job to keep them alive, hence why this colony is the Phoenix Project, where nobody dies through my great project management skills and definitely not resetting when things go bad. Despite my dupes being incompetent, I have made a sustainable colony that keeps them alive. The oxygen is now included and pumping through the veins of the base. The food is plentiful from the stables of hatches I raise and butcher through the most humane means. The temperature of the base is controlled through my state-of-the-art HVAC system. Power is provided from many means such as coal, natural gas, petroleum, solar panels, and literal lightning bugs. From all that, it sounds like the game is beat. Well, that's where you're wrong. I have just harnessed every single nook and cranny of this asteroid. There is still a whole solar system to access with rocket travel, which is what we will be doing today. It has been my goal since day 1 to get all the achievements in 1,000 days. We just have to tune 100 generators, launch a rocket, unlock the entire research tree, complete the colonize imperative, make a room 6 Kelvin, beat the game by launching a dupe into a black hole, have every single dupe do one task in an exosuit for 10 consecutive days, and tame every critter in the game, including gassy moos. That was a lot to take in. But now that you're completely up to speed, we can finally get started with cycle 750. To kick things off, I needed to make the surface of the asteroid more functional and safe from meteor showers. This meant removing all the debris the meteors left behind and setting up even more bunker doors made of steel to protect the solar panels from meteors. This is the max amount of bunker doors I can have on one power network, since together they all pull 1,920 watts and the wire overloads at 2,000 watts. I have more than enough steel at 8.8 tons, but I'm not quite sure how to add more bunker doors, so instead I decided to relocate the shovel's platform they call home, since it was currently covering a solar panel, causing it to produce less power. Their new home would be on the side of the map, out of sight and out of mind. And it appears we have a new variant of egg, being delectable eggs, which I'm pretty sure are just a scam and useless, because I'm not even very fond of the regular shovel, because they seem a bit high maintenance. So we're just going to shove them on this lone platform, and honestly just ignore that they ever existed. The shovels look nice and cramped in their new home, so I set my sights on protecting my surface infrastructure with meteor blasters. To supply the ammo for them, I built a blast shot maker in the heart of my base, only requiring iron and petroleum, both resources I had an abundant supply of. The shovels of course had another escape attempt, which was quickly stopped, and I found an alarming discovery. I thought abyssite was an extremely durable material that did an excellent job at preventing heat transfer. Well, it definitely stops heat transfer, but the meters are doing some serious damage and I see cracks forming in it. As a solution, I replaced them with steel bunker doors. The final star map location was discovered being the temporal tear, which after a quick read from a mysterious log I discovered, our current meteor is surrounded by neutronium, which is a very mysterious material, and at this temporal tear there is a ton of it. So if we send a dupe through it, they might be able to see a bunch of timelines, explore it, but never return, which will be sad, but I'm pretty sure we're not even close to reaching that one. So weird space stuff aside, for some reason the blast shots weren't being made, so I set the priority to yellow to coax the dupes into action. This still did nothing, so I investigated further and found I hooked it up wrong. Well, that's a weird input location. Okay, we have to feed in the petroleum directly, so that actually makes me reconsider this. Because the blast shot is useful at the surface, and my base is not quite at the surface. And all that it requires to make the blast shot is iron, which is at the surface, and petroleum, which I also have at the surface. Needless to say, I relocated to the surface where it actually makes sense to build. The drywall crisis of cycle 736 struck again because I apparently replaced one of the floor tiles with drywall, so the shine enough stable wasn't considered as stable. This was solved and the blast shot maker is now constructed. Horrifyingly enough, Bert was the only dupe certified to build the blast shots, with the pyrotechnic skill. Considering he accidentally drowned himself and glitched into the aqua tuner through magic, I gave some more competent dupes the skill as well. As for the next phase of our plan, we need to build a rocket. We have a sky above us to keep the rocket safe, so now it's a matter of building it. And we have the 2000 steel for the steam engine, 1200 steel for the research module since we want 6 of them on this one rocket, and the 200 steel for the command capsule. Then lastly the 200 steel for the gantry. So we have all the raw materials, which meant it was time to decide where to build the rocket. Initially I was going to put it on the surface where it had no protection from the meteor showers. This meant removing a ton of bunker doors, moving them to the left side of the surface where they were out of the rocket's launch path. Bert finally started making some blast shot ammo, but it was too little too late because the meteor shower started. Luckily the bunker doors were doing their job and stopping the meteors except on the side where they could sneak by. That's where the mesh tiles kicked into action by blocking the ones that made it through because they're easier to repair than the solar panels. While the meteor shower did its worst, I started making an expansion to the airlock terminal to the surface. And when it's all said and done, it looks a little something like this. Add on 4 extra Atmos suit docks. So we have a total of 9, 5 of which can use the jet suit and go out this way, only if there is a vacancy. And then the other alternative is to come up here, put on an Atmos suit, go out, do the blast shot here, or you can go out and do another task where you can just walk to. And we sustain the abyssalite barrier, keeping us from the heat death of the surface. So we should be a lot more productive on the surface. With increased productivity, I added meteor blasters where there weren't bunker doors. With no time to spare, as meteors started raining from the sky, and instead of destroying everything I just built, they got turned into a beautiful firework display. This filled me with enough confidence to think building the rocket on the surface was a good idea. This in fact is not a good idea, and luckily I came up with a better one at the time. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna be smart about this. Why build a rocket jankily on the surface for meteors to hit it when we can instead put a few bunker doors here and put a rocket silo going down to the ground? So in other words, that's exactly what we're doing. That was the plan until I realized rockets are hot and this location is not optimal in any way. There's some wildlife here, some pinch of peppers, so I'd be losing a lot of crops. Then there's also the worry of overheating the ice biome with the exhaust of the rockets. So I started looking around my world a little bit and, well, this is a big open area that's fairly rectangular and long in the vertical direction. It kind of seems like the perfect solution. And this was 100% unintentional. I just needed gold over here. Also, since we only had access to the steam-powered rocket, our hot water is right here, very balmy hot, essentially already boiling, and our rocket's right here. So it's a fairly short jog compared to tapping off of this line, this section here, going over, up this direction, cutting through our natural gas storage, then going up this way. So we're going to put one rocket over here and one rocket over here. This rocket will be purely steam. So I laid plans for the rocket silo to contain the heat of the rocket with insulated tiles and maintain a vacuumless space with bunker doors. Then I laid some pipe from the steam vent to the rocket where it would be turned into steam using a liquid tepidizer. For those of you who know how to play oxygen not included, that is not how you make steam. But just wait. When I finally realized the problem, I have a much more jank solution. In the meantime, I needed more metal to extend my heavy watt wire to the rocket silo, so I found every single metal pocket I could. That's how I discovered our glorious crude oil lake was starting to look more like a kiddie pool. So to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I excavated the entire right corner of the crude oil biome to get to the lead as a metal source and accumulate an abundant supply of crude oil to add to my lake, which only required the removal of a single wall to let the sweet, syrupy crude oil flow into the lake. I also had enough metal, so I was able to extend the heavy watt wire to the rocket silo. Then I thought I was being smart by building a boiler room with a liquid tepidizer, a sensor to detect the water level, a gas pump to remove the polluted oxygen to make a vacuum and later transport the steam to the rocket, and a liquid vent connected to the sensor to dispense the right amount of water to the boiler. Then for a little extra pizzazz, 2 switches were added to manually toggle the gas pump and liquid temperature on or off in case of an emergency. From there, I established a vacuum in the room, built a rocket with its many research modules to discover more advanced rocket travel methods, such as Petroleum, and ran into a problem placing the gantry. I tried to place it right below the command capsule, but it wasn't placing. This was because I needed 2 tiles of space instead of 1, so I just yeeted the ladders out of the way. Then I ran electricity to the bunker doors so they would open faster, connected the steam vents to the rocket, checked on the temperature to make sure it worked, and that looked pretty dang hot to me, so the steam was bound to come soon. I was pulling too much power on one of the conductive wire power lines, so to power the gantry I ran even more heavy watt wire, slapped down a transformer so that I could use conductive wire to go through the wall and reach it. Of course, the meteor shower started, so clearly that meant the bunker doors had to mysteriously open to expose the rocket to extreme danger of meteors and start eating all the oxygen to the vacuum of space. That's why I added a manual switch to close the doors for this exact situation. As for the rest of the surface, the bunker doors did a good job blocking the meteors from damaging the solar panels, but there was a ton of debris left behind on top of the mesh tiles that I needed to clear out, because if I didn't, the solar panels couldn't produce power because the sunlight was blocked from reaching them. Now, with the rocket silo fully constructed and secure, I just needed to select a destination, assign an astronaut, and supply an atmosuit to the rocket. Slight problem though. On the destination selection menu, my rocket had a total thrust of 0 centimeters. 0 centimeters. And it makes sense because the temperature has produced absolutely no steam and has only heated water to a maximum of 85 degrees Celsius. So this setup will not work. This was a tricky problem to solve because for the entire playthrough, heat was a major threat to my base that I combated with an aqua tuner to actively cool down hot areas. So now I had to achieve the complete opposite of a cooling system and make a heat generator. Luckily, I am full of stupid jank ideas and I am confident this is by far the most inefficient but effective solution. So let me explain how it works. Liquid comes in, which is piped from our hot cool steam vents. So we just tapped off of this line, along with running electrical all the way up to this transformer, and then putting it to the gas pump to suck out the steam. And we should be making steam because the area is very balmy hot at 162, 167 degrees C. So the water should come out the vent, turn into steam, get sucked up, go down through this vent, which is insulated, into the rocket, and that should be the system hypothetically working. And I went around the problem of there being a vacuum in space because drywall is apparently good for something and prevents the loss of gas and liquid in space. So from there I deconstructed our old failed attempt and gave our new one a shot. Water's coming in, it's getting steam. Oh, and it's getting a lot of steam. 500 grams? How many do we need to fuel this guy? So 900 kilograms. This was definitely a limited time solution because the blocks I was using to boil the water were getting cooled down over time. For the meantime though, the rocket was very quickly getting fueled with steam. At this time I also realized my scanner network was blocked by the bunker doors when they closed during meteor showers. So to have my meteor scanners work all the time, I placed some outside of the protective cover of the bunker doors along with some solar panels only protected by the meteor blasters. To keep the rocket silos safe, I also built an auto miner to automatically clear debris left behind by meteors, so my dupes won't have to manually remove it anymore. Just in case they did need to get to the surface though, I started constructing another airlock port to the surface, right next to the rocket silo, kitted out with atmosuit ports to ensure my dupes had oxygen while on the surface. To get the oxygen, I had to run the gas vents all the way from my base to the airlock stations. While they built that, it was time to launch our very first rocket. The rocket was fueled to its max capacity, letting it reach over 12,000 kilometers, so well within the range of the first 2 planets to get some data banks for research. The scanners told me there were no incoming meteor showers, so I opened the bunker doors to the rocket silo and was filled with so much excitement. Of course, I made Rowan the rocket pilot to ensure the mission went well, and from there I set the course to the nearest planet, got the rocket launch achievement, and discovered I overlooked quite a few crucial details during its launch sequence. This is about to be awesome. Oh shoot. Oh, well that's broken. I hope our rocket doesn't crash into that. Okay, good job, Lindsay. We need to turn this off like pronto because the rocket is about to hit it. Is it gonna be a concern? Oh, Thank God it wasn't a concern. This is awesome. Oh, there was quite a bit of damage. How much temperature did that let out? Ah, yes, very toasty. But it looks like the insulated tile is actually holding the barrier. Who's scalding? Oh, Bert's scalding. That's alright. Unlike the steam vents that have bust and spilled water everywhere because the steam that was in them has cooled down back into water since they no longer have a rocket to be funneled into. As a solution, I added a manual switch to turn the steam gas pump off. Only problem is my dupes had to build the room, so all the steam we had stored up is now being yeeted to the vacuum of space. While I was in there, I added a storage tank to store extra steam while the rocket was out, so there was no downtime in between launches. In no time though, the steam generator was back in action. Somehow Stinky was stuck at an airlock with no Atmos suit to leave, so clearly I forgot about him because our rocket was returning already. The bunker doors were opened, and out of the corner of my eye, who else did I see but Stinky entering the asteroid through the rocket silo. This is the problem because he does not know how to take off the suit without a docket station. He will wear it until the oxygen runs out and never take it off to breathe, even though he's surrounded by oxygen. So I tell him to throw it on the ground and someone will put it back in the jet suit port. The rocket came back and, per tradition, destroyed the gantry upon entry. On the right side we found the cool moldavite rock, which was useless unless you consider improving the morale of the dupes important. What was useful from this trip was all the databanks that could be used for research. A meteor shower started, so I hastily closed the rocket silo and admired my work of my meteor blaster successfully protecting my solar panels. Then I started up the virtual planetarium to begin researching the solid fuel combustion, one of the 6 remaining things left to research, only hindered by space science. Rowan, our research lead, quickly picked up his lab coat again and went full VR mode, enjoying every second he spent in the virtual planetarium. Aside from the small fact it was constantly overheating, but I chose to ignore that small detail because instead of solving the problem, my dupes could instead just continuously repair it. To combat the problem Stinky exposed with entering through the rocket silo, I set up a checkpoint station so only if you enter through the silo door can you leave. The rocket was already fueled up with no excess steam this time, so all left to do for the next launch was to find a pilot, which was harder than I thought. Rowan was partying it up too much with his girlfriend P, and was a little too tired to do his job. I was also negligent as usual and left the bunker doors open, so the rocket silo got slightly damaged by meteors. When Rowan wasn't tired, he was doing research and actually finished solid fuel combustion. I then tried to enlist Liam, who was drinking his coffee at the time, but he was too engrossed with his grind as the solo cook for the entire colony, so rather than make the colony starve to death, I had to choose between my last 2 pilots, May and Stinky, which of course I chose Stinky for obvious reasons. He's Irish, and also not a woman driver. But anyway, the rocket roared to life and broke the gantry once again. Then I added even more solar panels and scanners on the surface, watched the meteor blow straight through the shaft of the rocket silo, and when the bunker doors were actually closed, the auto miner was doing a great job at keeping them clean. My shovels weren't doing very well though. They all apparently died from the meteor showers, which is what I thought initially until I found all 13 of them crowded into this one singular block. The liquid pump to my leaky fixture also decided to act up and overheat, so I remade it out of steel in hopes that this would solve it. The fancy lobby was also in the way of my solar field expansion, so I took a little bit off the top so I would have enough flat surfaces to build on. Oh, and there's a rocket coming in. Oh, jeez. Yeah, Stinky just blasted straight through the bunker doors. No worries though, I ran some automation wire to the bunker doors and set a scanner to detect when the rocket would be coming back, so the doors would open in time in the future. Right now though, it's time for everybody's favorite halftime show, Nahan Does Automation. Today we learned, do not put a NOT gate over wire that is connected to itself. If you do, you get this. A system that gives a one-tick pulse on and off. Complete and utter nonsense to most, but if you want to make a meteor blaster building do a little jig, this is the circuit for you. Only downside, it's a huge waste of electricity, and people will question why, to which I say, why not? Don't worry, the system was actually fixed by making 2 separate automation lines, one to detect rocket entries to open and close the bunker doors, and another to detect meteor showers to activate the meteor blasters for defense. The rocket was ready for another launch, so I sent Rowan this time, tried to use a solid fuel thruster to increase the rocket's distance, but never figured out how to use it, so I removed it and launched the rocket with an extra research module. The gantry actually didn't break this time, but a shovel instead took a crap on one of the solar panels, causing it to overheat. Then I built a specialized laboratory room to contain the virtual planetarium, telescope, and mission control station. The telescope and mission control needed line of sight with the sky, so I had a glass ceiling, and to prevent the machines from overheating since they were in close proximity, I had the excess carbon dioxide from my base pumped up here to remove the heat from the buildings and yeet it into space. Liam took a liking to the mission control station, which decreased the travel time for the rocket. That proved very effective since the rocket already returned, bringing even more databanks and another moldavite rock. This additional moldavite rock pushed me over the edge, inspiring me to put them at the least decorative part of the base to make it a little more cheery. While I decorated, my meteor blasters were having their first test run defending my fully set up solar panel array, which was working flawlessly except for an area where my dupes couldn't reach the location I tried to build some automation wire. That was fixed by deconstructing the solar panels so my dupes could reach it now. Then somehow Lindsay smuggled a jet suit into the asteroid, so I told her to take it off, and oh my lord, that is a lot of pee that I will just leave right there. Next, the liquid pump for the oil fissure was overheating, so I set up a cooling line with radiant pipes over top of the pump that were fed with polluted water from the polluted water vent heading to my base. The research for the Petroleum engine also finished, so I was faced with a problem. We have this beautiful setup where we have our steam-powered rocket. It's all nice and beautiful, but if we're converting over to petroleum, that pipe is all the way across the map over here. So we either keep this area here and convert to petroleum and run a pipe here, or we go to this middle area, remove some solar panels, and put in a rocket silo here. I firmly believe 2 rockets is better than 1, so I'm building another rocket silo and evicting the local Dracos in the process. Of course, my dupes are never fully productive, so this time May became a magician. How did May get in this 1x2 square? Like, it's not even close to the ground, it's 4 off of it. May's magic trick aside, I have my own, which is making a rocket appear out of nowhere. So we have our petroleum engine, oxidizer tank, because apparently we need that, a liquid fuel, which is our petroleum, then 2, 4, 5 research modules, and then the capsule on top, and we did choose the name at this time. I decided the neutronium bullet because, well, the rift that we're going to at the end of the universe is to deal with neutronium, so this is the bullet to solve our problem. Now, as for how all this works, we get our petroleum from the pipeline that we have leading to our jet area, which goes all the way back down, if you remember earlier, to our industrial district, where we have 4 canisters of it stored down here, and another 6 that were up here, but were completely depleted. These rockets actually take a ton of petroleum. Anyway, it is fueled up, 900 kilograms worth, and the research modules are essentially the same. We have our gantry up here to load up the rocket, the same switch mechanism to send out the gantry, and the same switch mechanism to open the doors, and just had to run the automation signal all the way from our other scanner that was connecting to the other rocket. Now, as for a solution, we were running into the problem on the other side where people with rockets were like, hey, the door's open, let me just go through here and waltz through this door. So instead of having a port inside the surface to access the rocket, I'm going to require them to enter through the surface. This is the only entrance. They go down through here into the door, or they can enter through the bunker doors. And then if you look, the walls are completely enclosed, so they can only access it from the surface, so there shouldn't be a problem with Atmos suits. As for the oxidizer, what is an oxidizer? Apparently you need oxygen to burn fuel. So we have 2 options. We have oxalite, or if we do enough research on the hydrogen, we can get the liquid oxidizer tank. We do not have that, so we need to do solid oxidizers. That's where the nifty little dense puff comes into play. When they breathe in oxygen, they have a chance of dropping oxalite. So I decided to set up a whole new ranch area, which is fairly close to our base, so that the dupes can use the transit tube to take it all the way up to the area where they can ranch it, jump up, there's an airlock, and I am pumping in pure clean oxygen, so everything inside here is beautiful clean oxygen. Whenever they breathe in the oxygen, they let out oxalate. I have a sweeper in here picking up all that good oxalate, putting it into this conveyor loader, which then ships it up and over. As you can see on the conveyor line, it is shipping it currently to be dropped out of this chute, where the auto sweeper picks it up, puts it into storage, or loads it automatically into the oxidizer tank. As for shipping, there was a slight problem. The oxalate wants to off gas whenever it's exposed to the air. So if we look at where this rack is going, or where this rail is going, it is inside a floor every location along the way. There's a little bit of air right there, or it's in the water. So it can't off gas whenever it's in water or in a solid block. So we get more mass brought to our rocket. So that is how our rocket is working. It's just a matter of seeing if it actually works as intended. So I set the destination and watched as it majestically took off. Oh, this rocket looks awesome. Look at this. Oh, that is a ton of temperature. Holy, oh my word. That is a lot of heat. But that does look awesome. Oh, and it broke the automation wire, along with the gantry, which is a tradition for every rocket launch at this point, and the auto sweeper I had at the bottom of the silo, which despite being made of steel, couldn't withstand the extra heat from the Petroleum rocket. My solution was making a separate little room with a door as a heat buffer to protect the oxide storage and auto sweeper from the heat the rocket put off during every launch. I also had a gas input to keep the room overpressured so the oxalate wouldn't off gas. With the silo now fully functional, I took a look at the pretty moldavite space rocks, which were actually really helping the decor. And then I found a huge hatch uprising in my base. Apparently, they unionized because they didn't like being treated like cattle with the only purpose of being food. Like a good politician, I talked them down, and through some negotiations, they became piles upon piles of food without any further complaints. Then I discovered my offshore wood burning operation for power was heavily polluting the environment with carbon dioxide everywhere. I've done some horrendous damage to the environment in the past, but this time the entire bottom half of my world is carbon dioxide. So I'm actually going to remove the generator for the greater good. Plastic is clearly better for the environment, so I ran some more transit tubes to shorten my dupe's travel time for tasks such as harvesting this singular thimbleweed for reed fiber, harvesting pinch of pepper plants, harvesting even more pinch of pepper plants, adding a fast track path to the Petroleum rocket, and of course even more pinch of peppers. Installed plastic ladders to increase movement speed in the elevators on the right side going down to the crude oil biome, and on the left side heading to the airlock leading to the surface. For the last speed boost, I made all the floor tiles in my base in the metal for a 50% increase in speed. The Petroleum bullet returned, removing the bunker doors again, and overheating the auto sweeper, which at this point is just going to be standard maintenance for every launch, since we can't seem to handle the heat. The rocket did bring more data banks for research and a facilitator recharge, so we were able to grow our brain back to teach our dupes even more useful traits. This is where I started the Super Soldier program using Lindsay. She has already used the facilitator once and got sunny disposition, which reduces her stress by 20% each cycle. So if I keep shoving steroids into her system, she'll get so OP any task I send her on, I can consider done yesterday. This time she got plus 10 strength, so that means she can now carry even more items and never get stressed. So the ideal dupe, and we've just started. Also at this point the meteor blasters stopped being effective, so all my exposed solar panels on the surface were buried and destroyed by a meteor shower. I don't think I ever fully solved this problem in 1000 cycles, so unless I say otherwise, assume half my solar panels are either destroyed or in the process of being repaired to be destroyed. Research for the hydrogen rocket began, and then something strange happened. There was another Rowan in the printing pod, which was concerning because this one also liked the researching skill. An exact copy of our Rowan. Wanting to get out of this situation, I quickly took the balm lily seeds instead of Rowan 2, because there should only be one Rowan. There can only be one Rowan. I decided to check out our Rowan to make sure he was safe, and found he was still in the Petroleum bullet rocket. Since I've never seen this for any dupe, my running theory is, while he was in space, an alien was able to make a copy of Rowan. dare I say, an imposter, to try and infiltrate our colony and tear it down from the inside by impersonating our most trusted dupe. I'm thoroughly creeped out by this whole situation, so on a bright side, the shovel convicts escaped their prison again by capitalizing on the meteor shower. Don't worry, I'll wrangle them up eventually. After 5 cycles, the metal floor was fully installed in my base, along with the plastic ladders and the elevator columns. The rocket also returned so I could test my new oxalate storage system. This time, I have the sleeper out of the direct path of the door so the heat doesn't go straight into it. The only downside is the sweeper can only reach the storage container, so a dupe with a jetpack will have to manually get the oxalate out of the storage and put it into the rocket. From our next rocket launch, it appears the auto sweeper is safe with the heat not reaching the sweeper, so we have a winner. One of the 2 automation lines above the silo broke though. Nothing important, just a signal to turn my meteor blasters into attack mode to protect the solar panels. It was an easy fix, I just ran the automation wire all the way around the rocket silo to avoid the heat of the rocket during launches. With the rocket silo now fully functional and launching rockets left and right for research, I should probably solve the carbon dioxide problem back at the base. It's currently building up at the bottom because the vent taking the carbon dioxide out of the base is completely clogged, so to fix that, I need to remove this T-section connecting my industrial district's carbon disposal and instead pump it into my base first to let there be only one line leaving to prevent future clogs. Now the other reason we may be having blockage problems is because I added another carbon dioxide line. I know I said I would never use the carbon dioxide geyser, but I did find a use. We are connecting it with our carbon disposal to the surface, and we take a little split off right here. So the reason for this is this goes to the surface to cool this area where our telescope, planetarium, and control station are located, and the other pipe is going to where our auto sweeper and a rocket is. So if we look at the cooling, it is slightly orange where it's coming out. So this should work as a good cooling method to keep the auto sweeper from overheating, which I think is a kind of elegant solution, like we weren't using the carbon dioxide anyway. Then I briefly got distracted by my rocket returning because, I mean, come on, it's a freaking rocket. Of course you gotta watch it take off and land. This time Rowan found a wristwatch in space. Not sure how that got there, but it's ours now. The carbon lines were still fairly backed up, so as a solution, I took the carbon from the geyser and ran it separately from the base's carbon line, split off into 2 separate paths. The right goes to the silo and the left goes to cooling the space structures. That small tweak was enough to solve the carbon dioxide clog, so now the base could breathe a sigh of relief. I also wrangled up all the remaining shovels, which came to a grand total of 4. I believe we started with 14, so not the best survival rate, but I also don't use them for anything other than imprisoning them to prevent them from pooping on my solar panels. My conscience got the best of me though, and I moved them under some safe cover to try and prevent them from going extinct. Shockingly, I also moved the gantry back 1 tile to possibly prevent it from overheating. Then I gave the fancy lobby another shave off the top to make the entire surface one beautiful flat plane, so I could build more structures by packing them closer. Next I queued up Rowan for another rocket launch, having to go out to the 30-kilometer ring to reach new planets to research. As this rocket launched, I tensely waited to see if the gantry wouldn't break, and it actually worked. It may have taken 7 rocket launches to finally solve the problem, but we got there. I love and hate that the fix was that simple, that the gantry didn't have to overheat. That wasn't just a fact of life. Lyra shared in that excitement by streaking around the base, the kind of streaking where you burst into sparkles instead of taking off your clothes. With this excitement, she obliterated the fancy lobby with the help of Stinky and surprisingly Bert, leaving me a clean slate to build on. From that extra space, we added more solar panels, causing us to produce too much power we weren't able to store. You may be wondering how I have excess energy when my solar panels are constantly destroyed. Did I solve the problem? Well, no. I have no idea how there is extra power, but I won't question it. To solve the energy surplus, I took this beautiful pristine swamp biome and added batteries everywhere. If storage is the problem, just add more storage. This is oxygen not included though, and these batteries are releasing so much heat. Turns out having a ton of batteries in one area is a horrendous idea. So instead, I add only 3 batteries in my natural gas generator room, where I have a cooling system hooked up to prevent the batteries from overheating. The Giga battery unit was removed, and we would hope 3 extra batteries were enough. With the base secure, it was now time to start constructing the hydrogen rocket system, which meant removing the old steam rocket. It was sad to see it go, considering it started our journey, but we had to move forward to meet our 1,000 cycle deadline. The research for the hydrogen rocket still wasn't complete, but luckily, Rowan returned with more databanks and jumped right onto it, allowing Stinky to take the mantle of rocket pilot and head out to research the last 30-kilometer planet. In no time, the hydrogen engine was researched, and it was time to start building a rocket capable of reaching the temporal tear, which was the main reason we needed a hydrogen rocket. Steam and petroleum are not able to reach the 190,000-kilometer distance. I used a calculator to determine the modules required. At the time, I thought 5 research modules were needed to get data on the temporal tear. In reality, they weren't required, which I didn't know at the time, so I built a monstrosity of a rocket with 4 liquid hydrogen tanks, 2 liquid oxygen tanks, 5 research modules, and 1 command capsule. A 12-module long rocket that would be a huge waste of fuel, which took me 5 days to build and eventually realized the research modules were not required. If the temporal tear was a one-way trip, how would I get the databanks back to use for research? So I deconstructed it, and 4 days later we had a new state-of-the-art rocket kitted out with only 5 modules for improved fuel efficiency, a horrendously expensive silo made of the finest steel bunker tiles, and exposed to the vacuum of space, so heat is not a concern. This rocket is aptly named One Way, baby! Since it will only be launched once, resulting in the pilot's demise or discovery of a paradise universe. Even though it will not be returning, there is a scanner connected to the bunker doors to automatically open in case it does return, which it won't, but we can't tell the dupes that. Before the rocket can be launched, there is more research to be done. We need the solid cargo container to harvest the fullerene from planets. This fullerene makes supercoolant, which is required to cool hydrogen and oxygen gas enough to become liquids, which are the fuel for a rocket. This is a long chain of operations that will eventually make sense, but currently our research has stopped. We have the space science from rocket launches and the advanced science from water, but we are missing basic science, which is hilariously because we have no dirt. We have used every single ounce of dirt on this asteroid. So to solve the problem, I turned off all of our dirt-consuming features. This meant no more dirt deliveries to Mealwood to feed the Dracos, and no more dirt sent to feed the Sage Hatches, which they're used to at this point. With these changes, our pips would gradually produce more dirt since they have an ample supply of arbor wood to eat. Even though progress was stopped on the research front, I could still stockpile more space research, so I set my sights on the planet 40,000 kilometers out. The only problem is my rocket was incapable of going this far because I needed to add another liquid fuel container. This meant extending the rocket sail upward to make the extra space needed, filling up the tank with petroleum, and launching the new finished rocket. With that, we have reached the halfway mark of our 250 cycles, and we have only gotten one of the 9 achievements we needed to reach perfection by cycle 1000. So let's make a game plan and see if this is even feasible. So first, Great Escape. We need to send a dupe to the temporal tear. We have the rocket, but we need fuel. We will need to build an oxygen and hydrogen producing machine, which is the same as the one producing oxygen for our base and hydrogen to power the oxygen machine. But instead of using the oxygen for breathing, as we did in our base, we'll instead turn it into a liquid somewhere over here, along with the hydrogen. And of course, that'll be done by using the aqua tuner to cool it down. I'm not sure how cool. Hydrogen gas. Yeah, -250. So that is extremely cold. So we have the resources to figure this out. We can build that. Another thing on our radar is home sweet home. We need to get all our dupes extremely happy, which is satisfied, and we also need to build a great monument. So to build a great monument, the monument base takes steel and obsidian, which we do not have enough steel. The monument body takes steel, plastic, and ceramic, which we have enough of the ceramic and plastic, but not steel. And then the third and final part, the head, which takes even more steel, diamond, and glass. So the only hindrance on this achievement will be the steel, because I will need a lot of our 7.4 ton steel stockpile to build the aqua tuners for cooling the hydrogen and oxygen for the rocket. So not a huge problem, but it will be on the back burner until the one-way rocket fueling setup is built. Now we have Honorable Doctorate, which is getting all the things on our research tree, where if we look here, we have a ton of it filled out. but we have our final 3 are surprisingly limited by dirt, but we do have a solution for that. So that is research figured out. We are just figuring out the dirt. For Critter Whisperer, we have to tame all the animals, so I am just missing a Gasimu, which is also needed for the movement on up achievement. The reason we don't have one is back on the research tree. We need to finish the last research branch to get a biological cargo bay to put on a rocket that we send to an organic mass planet where we can kidnap a Gasimu to bring home with us. For not okay but pretty cool, I need to reach 0 Kelvin, which I can do by making super coolant at the molecular forge. Super coolant has no freezing point, so I will put it in the optical tuners for making liquid hydrogen and oxygen, since they require extremely low temperatures. As for making the super coolant, the only tricky part is obtaining fluorine by sending rockets with cargo bays to planets that have it. Luckily, my first 2 planets have it, so it's not a far flight. For the finely tuned machine, I only have 20 machines left to do. During these past 125 days, I've been tuning the hydrogen generators, so it is just a matter of time. For the last and possibly hardest, I have to have all my dupes do a task while wearing an Atmos suit. This is tricky because some of my dupes like Hassan stay in the base all day doing ranching tasks, or Liam stays in all day cooking. I think my solution will be putting a max priority digging task to force all my dupes to get out. But for the meantime, I need to focus on getting the rocket launched to the temporal tear because it will take some time to reach it, so I think it will need to be launched by cycle 950 in order to reach the tear in time. Now that we're all on the same page with a sense of urgency, let's do this. Also, consider subscribing if you made it this far in the video. I've enjoyed sharing my Oxygen Not Included journey with all of you, and I hope you have enjoyed the journey as well. So, now that we're equipped with the plan, let's get to that temporal tear. Things instantly got off to a bad start because I had the unfortunate discovery that our oil lake was officially dried up. As an American, I was distraught and started to question if it was even worth going on. What is Oxygen Not Included without oil? Luckily, there was a solution. Destroying the entire crude oil biome to consolidate every last drop of oil into a series of lakes. And after 3 days of mining and consolidating the oil, we have not just 1 small pond of oil, but 2 that will keep our petroleum rocket program going. As long as there is crude oil pumping through the veins of the base, it will survive another day. From there, I started clearing out an area next to the hydrogen rocket silo to turn oxygen and hydrogen into liquids. This sadly meant destroying the last relic of the steam rocket, being our steam generator. In a way, it still lives on because I accidentally created a permanent rainstorm in the old steam rocket silo. It pools up as a liquid at the bottom, but evaporates from the residual heat left from all the rocket launches. For once, I made something naturally beautiful. Next, my OCD got the better of me, and I had to raise my rocket 3 tiles up to be in line with the rest of the asteroid surface I mowed down. I hate myself for having to do this, but I know it was going to bug me, and it's probably bugged some of you also. During the transition, Stinky decided OSHA didn't exist and went for a spacewalk without an Atmos suit on. I tried to have him equip one, but he just ran past him and went back to work. So I'm just gonna let him do his thing. And it clearly worked, with the rocket now moved 3 spaces up and not driving me closer towards insanity. Ron returned from another rocket launch and found a facilitator recharge. This meant Lindsay could get shot with more steroids to become our super soldier. Although she was looking a little green this time, I went through with the facilitation and she got deep diver's lungs. So she now consumes less oxygen. This made her now only 1 facilitation away from being the perfect unit of a dupe. Marie was also killing it by making insane amounts of blast shot ammo, so our solar panels were actually all functioning for the first time in a while. Then I tried to solve our dirt problem by converting algae into the dirt, which requires a lot of heat. Luckily, we have a ton of heat produced every time a rocket launches, so I shoved the storage in at the bottom, filled it full of algae until it couldn't store anymore, then broke the storage so the algae was fully exposed to the unrelenting blast of the rocket in hopes it would convert to dirt. The dense puffs weren't producing enough oxalate to keep up with our strict rocket launch schedule, so I added an oxalate refinery to their enclosure. This machine took oxygen pumped through the vents and gold to make the oxalate. The only downside was it produced a lot of heat, so I removed the insulation tiles above it to let the world act as a cooling unit, and it also consumed a whopping 1200 watts of power, putting a huge load on our electrical system, which I hoped wouldn't overload it or cause future problems. Steel production was also down from a lack of lime, so I started using fossils instead of eggshells to keep production going. We have a tight schedule to keep, so we need the refinery running all the time. With all the fires now put out, I took the opportunity to finally lay out the entire oxygen and hydrogen liquefaction system. And just like that, all of the planning is now complete. Rolled barrier is up here, gave us a little gap up there. Here is our oxygen and hydrogen machine. Then down here is where we cool the liquid. Then we have our hydrogen tank and our oxygen tank. Now my dupes just had to build it, so of course they found some interesting ways to cause problems. Okay, slight oversight on my part. There is a meteor shower, and I should have built the bunker tile roof first before I was doing construction, but that's why we do it during the meteor shower. Oh geez, there's a meteor. And it missed everything. That is beautiful. Oh geez. Oh, I thought I was about to be very bad. I just saw Travado plummet out of the sky. That's a tall fall. He's just built different, I guess. Travado's insane feat must have inspired Liam to help with the build, because this is the first time I've seen him outside the base and not cooking, while Hassan got stuck on a platform and Ashcan peed his pants. I took a break from my dupes by starting the launch process for the Petroleum rocket since the oxide storage was now full. I also gave the rocket a new fitting name considering it was fueled with petroleum. Rowan ate his dinner and I launched the rocket, this time watching to see if the algae in the bottom converted to dirt, which it didn't. Then there were some minor problems like Lyra not having any oxygen and running for her life. When she did find oxygen, she was greeted to a pee-filled room. Bert decided to be the peak of inefficiency and waste jet fuel while taking a nap. That wasn't enough for Bert though, because he had to get stressed all the way to 100% along with Lyra. Lyra, I understand why she was stressed. She nearly suffocated and was in a room full of pee. Bert was just being difficult. I think this because Lyra solved her stress by going to the massage table like a normal person, while Bert ate his sorrows away by binge eating. Arlo tried his best to calm Bert down, but he didn't listen until the fridge was completely empty, and then he decided to go to the massage table. Why couldn't you do this before you ate 10,000 calories? And this is no exaggeration, I don't even know where all that food went. At least I have Amare, who is Bert's foil, a dedicated dupe that actually makes my life easier by doing their tasks without throwing a tantrum. Bert had one more trick up his sleeve, this time the classic stuck in the aqua tuna trick. I'm not even mad at this one. It's honestly funny he managed to do it twice. Despite his shenanigans, the system was fully built 15 days after I started. So let me explain how this majestic beast of a unit works. We start with our oxygen and hydrogen being made here with the electrolyzers, which have a water input, which I have cut off right now, which I have running down our cool steam vents where the water is around 75 degrees C, so it's kind of warm and not really desirable to use, so I can chuck it up here. Into these, they spew out oxygen and hydrogen. Hydrogen goes to the top of the room, and then these airlocks block it so it can't go through, or block it so the oxygen can't go through, and hydrogen creeps up over. And the oxygen settles to the bottom and gets taken out by the gas pumps. And there's a little bit of automation here because the oxygen gets produced at a faster rate than hydrogen. So you need to get rid of it somehow. And the solution that they used that I liked was chucking it out to space, because you can either use it and pipe it somewhere else or just say Auf Wiedersehen and it's gone. The automation is fed the Atmos sensors to sense the pressure, and if it gets to a certain level on both of the levels, then these doors open. Now if we follow our lines down, the top one is our hydrogen line, which connects here and goes in a loop around, so it doesn't stay stagnant in the pipe here and get too warm or cool. And then hydrogen comes out here, then it gets cooled by this setup over here, which I don't exactly understand how it works. The radiant pipe goes through the door and the glass made of diamonds, so I guess glass is good at transferring heat. So the heat goes through here, gets cooled off, and these doors open based on the thermosensor. So this moderates the temperature inside of here. If it gets too warm, this automation signal tells it, hey, you need to open these doors and cool it off. So then they open and heat transfer can happen because The mechanized airlock is considered a tile and not a vacuum. Once it becomes a liquid, it gets piped out with the liquid pump and fed to the different canisters on the rocket. In this case, we have 3, and we have it cycling through like this to where it doesn't stop and go straight into it, kind of like how we fed in here, because then the liquid at the end of the line would sit here and just keep getting warmer and warmer, and then would break the pipe when it becomes the gas again. So we have it go through in a little bit of a loop and get dispersed back in to be same thing is done for the oxygen down here, exact same way. And it is cooled by these pipes here, which go up to our aqua tuners, one for the oxygen on the right and one for the hydrogen on the left. And they work the same way as the other ones. Liquid pipe thermosensor gives a signal based on the temperature you want in the pipe, and it is negative 251 degrees C for the hydrogen and negative 230 degrees C for the oxygen. So these need to get really cool. So that requires supercoolant, which is the only missing part of our build. And of course, electrical wise, it was a bit of a nightmare feeding the electrical to space because we have the airlock here, but I used conductive wire and jumped it over and through the wall here. Fed them over, jumped a few times, and dispersed. And this will be consuming a lot of power because if you look at it, this is 1200 watts, this is 1200 watts, and these will hypothetically be running continuously. That's 240 watts on our system, and then of course there's a little extra here, 240, 240, 120 for the doors, and then up here, 120 for electrolyzers and 240 for the gas pumps. Assuming everything here is running at the same time, that is an additional 4,320 watts. And if we look at our main electrical line, we have a potential load of 31,000 watts, and it can only sustain 20 kilowatts. So I'm hoping we don't run into an electrical problem, but that is our setup here, looking crazy cool. I could not have gotten closer to the sky limit with this build and jammed it in here because I saw it as a horizontal design and I'm like, well, if I make it vertical, it'll take up less of a profile. And surprisingly, it actually worked. So now the only missing component is supercoolant, which is blocked by our shortage of dirt holding up this chain of operations. Our rocket has also returned, giving the algae in the silo another blast of heat, but it hasn't converted. I think this is because I have 20 tons of it in one pile, so that is a lot of mass for the rocket to heat up. Using this logic, I made an algae setup in the old steam silo that has the raging rainstorm with only 1,000 kilograms of algae. Now it's just a waiting game to see if the evaporating water will heat up the algae enough. In no time we had dirt, but not from any method I set up. There was for some reason a random block of dirt on top of the asteroid destroying one of my scanners. I assumed it was something to do with our shovels, but as editor Nahan, I know they had nothing to do with it. For now, it will remain a mystery until I accidentally stumble onto the solution. Regardless of the source, I was able to do some more research with it, and while tending to the shovels, we got the tune up for what achievement, so there's one more achievement down. Then for some reason I had an insane excess of plastic, so I made every single ladder on the asteroid into their plastic version for increased speed and productivity. To encourage the algae's conversion into dirt, I reinstated the steam generator and pumped the hot steam directly onto the algae. Anytime now it had to convert. I needed some sort of renewable process. There was still so much research to do and not nearly enough time. It was not budging after a day of constant steam, so I set up 3 more algae drop points with even smaller sizes to see if they would work. We have 500 kilograms, 200 kilograms, and 100 kilograms. The storages were destroyed and the algae was dropped directly into the blast zone of the steam. I needed this to work, but the days kept passing as I watched the steam billow out of the vents. Still, nothing changed. I neglected some of my dupe's basic needs such as food, with their calorie count dropping all the way to 100,000 calories. Lucky for the colony, Travado took charge by harvesting the bristleberries because I was obsessed with dirt. My logic was sound. How could it fail? But yet, everything was. The steam generator was overheating. The dupes would soon starve. My pending launch date for the tear was fast approaching. My dream of getting all the achievements was slipping out of my hands. All I could do was remain paralyzed as I watched the algae for days on end, feeling more and more hopeless. Until it finally happened. Oh! It did the thing! It did the thing! It worked! I didn't catch it. The 200 kilogram one turned. So that means somehow on the surface there was a material that could turn into dirt. But it freaking works. It works. It took me 9 days to do it, but it works. It transformed. Let's go. We caught it this time. Okay, so that was the 500 one, so that is a big increase in our current count. With all this dirt converting, I could start initiating my plan to convert the purely research-focused Petroleum rocket into a dual-purpose, solid cargo, and research rocket. While the rocket was being deconstructed and research for the cargo bay was getting done with our freshly obtained dirt, I tried to optimize our dirt converter by insulating the area to contain the steam. This did not work at all, but my next experiment with using the surface to heat up the algae did prove to be very effective. Oh, what the heck? It's already turned into dirt. You gotta be kidding me. Is that easy? No. Well, oh, okay. I think I see what's going on here. So, moral of the story, this container was built out of extremely hot mafic rock. And that's why I have all the other ones built out of. But this one must have been on the surface like this guy here. So he is extremely toasty. I'm going to delete these and leave this guy here to continually be replenished, drop the 1,000 things of dirt from the converted algae. That's stupid easy. This lone storage container has made more dirt than my attempt down here, which is still not working. Me using the rockets to also heat it up, and then also my pips. Because they have been trickling some in, we're at 53 of 70. But with that burst of 1,000, that's 100 researches that can be done for the basic science. I'm happy that's that simple. We'll take the wins where we can get them. That was a huge win. Oh, there's more dirt. One storage container. Wait. It's actually the stuff on the ground doing it. No way. Oh, chucking on the ground is a lot faster. Because I guess the sun is shining down on everything and heating it up. Okay, we are set on dirt. Dirt is no longer a concern. I researched, 669. Nice. From there, I deconstructed a steam setup to save our water supply. Then the research for the cargo bay was completed, so I added a cargo bay to the rocket, selected a planet for research and supply gathering, and sent the rocket on its way. This rocket is a special one because it is actually the last research mission we needed to get the data banks to complete the research tree. Since we now also have an endless supply of dirt, it wouldn't be long until all the research was done. This left me with the daunting task of getting enough fullerene to make all the supercoolant I would need. Since time was not our friend, I built a second Petroleum rocket with 2 cargo bays that could reach a distance of 30,000 kilometers. This way, it could reach the 10,000 kilometer planets with fullerene and the 30,000 kilometer planet with steel, fullerene, and niobium. I scavenged the steel to build a new rocket from the hydrogen rocket silo and added a shipping line to unload the cargo bays into the safety of the asteroid. Most importantly, the rocket needed a name, so I named it the Explosive Camel. The rocket was going up fast, but I forgot about something. More accurately, someone. And it is Trivaldo. He is at the bottom of this rocket silo and currently suffocating. He's sold a suit, has low morale, and is hungry. So that's a lot going on. Why is he here? Well, there's a continuous ladder going up and up and up, and now there's a roadblock. He cannot bridge this gap. So he had to fly down here with the rocket. Yeah, he ran out of rocket fuel, fell down here, and can't get back up. Quick fix. Destroy the wall. Oh, he can't even get down there. Okay. Counter solution. We punch a hole right there. Go on, Trivaldo. You need oxygen. And he is saved. Barely. Oh, there's a facilitator recharge. I did not know I had that. Okay, good. Lyra's fixing it up for him. See, this is teamwork. Somebody almost dies and then we solve the issue. See? Thumbs up. We're all good. With the discovery of the facilitator recharge, I shoved Lindsay back in the borderline torture chair to facilitate and become the ultimate soldier with her last upgrade. Now that I think about it, what does facilitate even mean? Hold on 1 second, Lindsay. Define facilitate. Alternate or waver between different options or actions. Be indecisive. Well, that doesn't sound good. Congratulations, Lindsay. You are now at the peak of indecisiveness that can also get plus 20 health per cycle. Back to building a rocket, I had to run the petroleum line to fuel the explosive camel. This meant tearing up all the solar panels so I could recess the petroleum line into the bunker tiles for extra protection. With the construction of the final pipe, the petroleum started flowing to the rocket. The only missing component now was oxalate, so I turned the oxalate refinery on and eventually had Lyra load up the last piece of oxalate to reach our 30,000 kilometer goal so that we could get steel along with fullerene at the planet. Sneaky was hard at work doing the research while Rowan was out, but I pulled him away so he could pilot the explosive cannel, and as per usual, something went wrong. Oh geez, somebody's scalding. Oh, that is a design flaw. That's quite a big design flaw. The heat from the rocket went down into our buffer zone, which that generally is not a good thing, especially since everybody who goes there is now scalding. So I get the fun task of moving all of this down probably 5 blocks to be safe. So here's the space checkpoint moved down all of maybe 4 blocks. But this should give us enough of a buffer between the rocket and where there's open air, so the insulation should prevent it from seeping through. So we move on to our next problem. And we knew this was going to happen, but if we meander all the way down to the crude oil fields, this one empty as usual, this one empty as not usual. So we have to move to our third and final patch, because if we look in our line, it is empty. Fairly empty here also, more and more empty, and it is empty all the way through. So luckily we do have a little bit of a buffer here of 20,000 kilograms, and up at our space exit another buffer of 30,000 kilograms. So we have 50,000 for the time being. To make this change, it isn't too difficult. Just had to lay down a new line of pipe leading to our last pool of crude oil, add electrical wire for the pump, and the crude oil started flowing once more. And we barely put a dent in our storage. I do believe 25 tons of plastic is more than enough that I'll need. So let's actually disable our plastic polymers this time, because our petroleum will be much better used as either A, making power, or being shoved up to our rockets to be used as fuel for their jetpacks or fuel for the rockets. To ensure the asteroid was fully utilized, I also mopped up every single speck of oil I could. Every ounce would eventually be used, so I needed it all. Hold up, wait. There's a slickster down here? I thought they were extinct in the wild. I guess nature will find a way. And I would find a way to capitalize on it by making a holding cell for the slickster to produce oil I could use. The rest of the mopped up and bottled oil would be taken to my domesticated slicksters and poured out using the bottle emptier to add to the oil pipeline. Also, Rowan has returned from his trip, and if we look down here at all of our science, oh yeah, that is a lot of data banks. How are we doing on research? Woo, got the basic science out of the way. We have plenty of dirt is what that tells me. So in no time we should have a gas canister and a liquid cargo tank. As for the resources from the rocket, we got obsidian, copper, and iron, which will be useful for building. As for the rocket itself, we no longer need any more databanks, so I can remove the research module and add another cargo bay, so we have 2 rockets fetching us all the fullerene we could ever need. Oh, and our other rocket has also come in and fully unloaded, so let's see the spoils of how much steel we got. Oh, it is backed up. That is a beautiful sight to see. That is definitely the planet to go to. So as the last of it falls through, let's see the final count. So 53 kilograms of niobium, 600 of glass, 500 of copper, 780 of steel. That is insane. And only 3,500 grams of fullerene, which means it is finally time to start making some supercoolant. So supercoolant needs petroleum, gold, and fullerene. We will have that start producing, and max priority. I'm concerned about the power consumption, but we should be alright. Our circuit can handle it, but we may not be producing enough power, because I did notice we are completely out of natural gas again, so we're in a dormant period. Even though this is bad, I think our power system will work it out. Rowan and P are happy again since they are back together. And I didn't even think of this, but where they sleep is right below the coal generators. So I imagine not the quietest place. That didn't stop him from finishing the research for the liquid and gas canisters though. Well, how the heck did you get entombed down there? Oh geez. Somebody, can you like save Lyra? Devin, don't clap for that. This is not behavior we clap for. Okay, Lyra is alive and she's clapping. Okay, I guess we're all just clapping. While those two dupes were clapping at every single thing, Stinky was going ham on basic science, May was killing it at the supercomputer, and Rowan was slaying as usual at the virtual planetarium. So the final research block was going up real fast and would be done in no time. Bert stepped up to the task of making our first bit of supercoolant, and I launched another rocket to fetch even more fullerene, which somehow broke the floor of the silo. From there I started adding the supercoolant to the hydrogen rocket's cooling loop to make the liquid hydrogen fuel and liquid oxygen oxidizer, which somehow would need to be done in 12 cycles to reach our target launch date of day 950. Camille did not help our situation by deciding to starve to death. Apparently we had 80,000 calories of food, but it wasn't edible because it needed to be cooked, so I restarted that day with Liam cooking up a storm, and the crisis was averted. With the launch date fast approaching, it was now time to ask the question, who should we send to the temporal tear? Because whoever we send there will not be returning. And a good candidate for being sent is possibly Rowan, because he is the leader of this colony. So it would make sense that he would be sent. But it would also be sad, because we've been with him all this time, seen him grow, gain all of his crazy skills, super athletic, great at science. Or conversely, we could send some of our rejects, like Devin, who almost destroyed our colony a few times, Bert, who died in our first playthrough and has sealed himself in the Aqua Tuner twice, Ashcan, who almost destroyed our colony also, and those are the only really bad ones, and there's just neutral ones that's just like, well, you could send P, she's kind of under the radar, but we won't know who's going until we hit the launch button. In the meantime though, I will be launching rockets to get the rest of the fullerene we need for the Aqua Tuners, which are actually working pretty good right now, but if we get more supercoolant, the gases can be cooled into liquids even faster. But don't forget the first rule of oxygen not included, things will always not work as intended. In this case, the hydrogen rocket fueling system I just now got fully running is draining all of my power. So a quick fix is making a power control room at the natural gas generators so they can produce a little bit more power when engine tuned. The power in my base was also out for the refrigerators, which is the worst possible thing that could happen. No power means no cooled food. No cooled food means it rots. And rod food means the dupes starve. No dupes means no colony. The current band-aid will have to be returning to the dark ages where most of my dupes run on hamster wheels for power. Some positive news is all of the research is now finished. That means one more achievement down, and we now have access to the biological cargo bay, so we can now get a Gasimu, which is needed for 2 of our final achievements. Back to our power crisis at hand, the hamster wheels are actually supporting the vital part of the base, and as another solution I am building a massive storage bank 2.0. This is needed to capture all of the energy from the solar panels during the day and store it for the night. This time the battery bank should work because I am running a cooling line through all of them. With these minor changes, even at the dead of night we were producing more power than we were consuming, but not by much. I don't like relying on natural gas to be our main power provider, since it can go dormant at any time. So I removed the polymer press and in its place put another petroleum generator. Oil is also a finite resource, but reliable since I can control where my petroleum is sent. With the power kinda solved at the moment, I reconfigured one of the cargo rockets to carry a Gasimu with a biological cargo bay. At this point it was already day 951, so the launch window for the temporal tear was sadly missed. The cooling system was just starting to reach the required cooling temperatures to start making the liquids, but I just wasn't fast enough. One missed achievement wasn't the end of the world, so I went on trying to get the rest in time. Starting with launching a biological cargo rocket to an organic mass asteroid to get some Massimus I could tame. The petroleum generator was installed and power looked good in the sense that everything was running, but not good in the sense that the wire was getting close to its overload amount of 20 kilowatts. I have about a 5 kilowatt gap before it's an issue, so I decided to just ignore it. Especially considering the cooling system is running at near max capacity with about 60% of the supercoolant, so it won't be soaking up much more power when fully running. And didn't need to be fully running to start overheating the turbines though. The water I had keeping them cool decided to freeze into a solid because the cooling line was too effective. So I would need to put a layer of supercoolant instead of water under the turbines, which meant my insatiable plundering of fullerene couldn't stop just yet. The explosive camel had a few more trips before the cooling system would be complete. Our first bit of good news came at cycle 957 with the first bit of liquefied hydrogen, meaning we had reached the required temperature, so now it was just getting enough of it into the rocket. Food also turned around, reaching 150,000 calories, so we were no longer on the edge of life and death of the colony, which is a good thing. The explosive camel returned with the fullerene and carbon, which had a problem of changing into refined carbon during transport to the asteroid. But I could just dig it out. The liquid hydrogen started filling the rocket, but don't forget about meteor showers. They were devastating as usual, putting all my solar panels offline. And the hydrogen decided to change state while in the pipes, causing them to burst. In a perfect world, I would have insulated pipes to prevent this, but those are way too expensive, requiring reed fibers. So my solution would be constantly repairing broken pipes and hoping enough hydrogen would trickle through to fuel the rocket. The supercoolant was finally made for the steam turbines, and they could breathe a sigh of relief as they were no longer overheating and actually being cooled. Back to the hydrogen pipes, the problem with them breaking is once one goes, you have to jump onto it real fast, or the hydrogen sits in the line, heats up, and breaks more piping, losing the precious liquid hydrogen. This solution would have to work though. There wasn't enough time to get insulation, and a duct tape solution was good enough for me. More supercoolant was added to the rocket cooling unit, and it was so close to being full. One more batch of fullerene from a rocket launch, and it would be up and running at max capacity. Then using the niobium from our rocket launches and wolframite from the asteroid, I started making thermium, which had an extremely high overheat temperature, perfect for solving the overheating pump at the oil fissure once I got enough of thermium, which took 3 cycles, but hopefully this is the last time the pump has to be replaced. Another rocket full of fullerene returned, leaving a huge stack of refined carbon bursting out of the top of the silo and actually burying the entire bottom of it as well. With everything running fairly smooth, I decided to also start building the monument, starting with causing a monsoon level flood to make space for the monument's 3 segments. The rocket with the gassy moves also came in, so for the time being, I left them in the cargo bay since I did not have a stable for them, and hoped that they didn't need food. Oh, and we finally have liquid oxygen. For once, it seemed like everything was working and the base was flowing like a finely tuned machine as I watched the liquid oxygen fill the rocket. From there, I set my sights back on to the monument. So the monument body can go right there. We can mop up the floor. All the polluted water is cleaned up. And we have our middle section built. Just set us back a few tons of steel, but we are at 6.7. So we should have enough for the head. 5,000 more steel, a couple diamonds, and glass, and we have our monument. So while the head's being built, we may as well build the rest of the structure, which I intend to be a new kitchen and a new mess hall. So that gives all of the dupes an excuse to put on Atmosuit for that one achievement. Once the head was built, I got to customize the statue. So of course, you know what dupe I went with. The one that represents everything that is right with this colony. Rowan's our guy. This is our statue. This is our message. Now, let's make the ultimate dupe haven here, which was interrupted by us getting the Home Sweet Home achievement, where it gave us a slideshow of what was right with our base. Everybody threw a little party after that, celebrating the base being complete or calling home, something like that. But there was more work to do. Such as Meemaw being the only dupe responsible for uncovering the solar panels after a heavy meteor shower. Thank you, Meemaw. We appreciate your service. So I got a little bit further in the build, made quite a bit of progress, but somehow all of the shovels died. I'm assuming old age, because there's a bunch of meteor on top and to the left, but not to the right or the bottom. But they're gone and there's only one delectable, so there's a chance of them surviving, but ultimately I really don't care about the shovels, so I'll let nature take its course. Then I got the not okay but pretty cool achievement by getting a building to 6 Kelvin, which was definitely due to the hydrogen or oxygen liquefaction tanks, because these are crazy cold. Something else crazy cool is the dupe megaplex I built around the Rowan monument. It took me 17 days to build, so let me give you a tour of the wonders it holds. It's only fitting to have Rowan as the centerpiece since he is who I consider leader of the colony. And if we move up here, we have our refrigerators, which are to store the finished food, which are being shipped all the way from down in our kitchen. All the raw materials for cooking are stored down here. They're cooked up, shoved in the shipping rail, sent all the way up here to be stored. And if the dupe wants to use the restroom before they eat, they can, and they have to wash their hands before they leave. Which brings me to our cooling pipe. We have brought it up here, tapping from our base, and temperature is looking a little bit better. I definitely used the wrong material for the drywall. Now, as for another basic need, there's of course oxygen, which comes from the main base as usual, goes up, diverts into 3 separate areas. 2 of them are the Atmo suit ports, and then the other one is the air to breathe, which is distributed equally between all the rooms. So, as for the rest of the rooms, they can get their food, go down the ladder or the fire pole, and eat in their great halls, where I have each of the 3 shifts split up. So here's shift 1, shift 2, and shift 3. Then once they're done eating, they can go to the recreation room to get their espresso or boogie on down. And if they're feeling a little stressed like Rowan, they can go to the new and improved massage room. And my theory for the Atmosuit ports, to have them as an entrance, is to get the achievement job sustainability, where it says have every dupe in the colony complete at least one chore while wearing an exosuit. So it depends what's considered a chore, because I don't think this system is going to work as I intended, because eating I don't think is a chore. Recreation hall dancing is not a chore. Massage isn't a chore. So in general, I think the whole purpose of this room is not functional, but is a good way to separate finished food from the raw resources, which meant I didn't need the old dining hall anymore, so everything could be removed and replaced with a downward expansion in the house, more comfy beds, and a natural gas range that I actually never used. The old recreation hall was also removed and replaced with more comfy beds. The addition of all these comfy beds allowed my dupes to more easily have a high morale, so they wouldn't get stressed and lash out with reactions like binge eating. So now, with all these advancements in our base, it is looking crazy good, but I have been putting off something. That has been launching the rocket to the temporal tear. And honestly, it's because I'm unsure who to send. And I mean, there's honestly a few ways I can go about doing it. Either I select a dupe that we just kind of want to yeet into space and forget about because of their past transgressions, or send a dupe that we care about and have cherished the entire time they've been with us, and send them off to possibly a paradise world, but we honestly don't know what's on the other side. So I guess may as well go through all the dupes and weigh the options. So of course we can start with Ashcan. He has proved himself to be useful, a good machinist, but he did almost destroy our base by being glut, if I remember correctly. It was him or Devin who did. And then there's good old little P, Rowan's girlfriend. They've been a good shipper or storage person. Haven't had many problems with them. There's Lindsay, our secret test project, where we put all the neuro facilitations on, so they're a little bit more valuable than the other dupes. Hassan, the master rancher, who has been very faithful to his pets, keeping the food flowing in for a colony, so he is definitely not going. Camille, one of our greatest diggers, was really good at expanding the base, excavating areas, and overall no complaints. They're not really a spacefaring being, even though they do a lot of digging on the surface. Then there's Bonnie, another great rancher, even better than Hassan, surpassed him even though she came a little bit after, so she's earned her place to stay here. Then there's Bert. Where do we even start with Bert? He gave us trouble on our first attempt, died in the water hole, made everybody sad, how dare he. Then of course this time he locked himself in the aqua tuner, not once but twice, so he's a possible option. Liam, we trained him to be a rocket man, but he's first and foremost a cook, and has been cooking the entire time, so I feel like his place stays here on the colony. Ren, our artist and scientist / doctor, we can't lose this treasure. Travaldo, a farmer who wears a tuxedo, he's gotta stay. Then there's Devin, locked himself in the steam vent for some apparent reason, who knows why. And he might have been the one who Benji'd it, I do not remember. I feel like sending him would be a waste of a rocket. Lyra, our lead construction. Then there's Amari, our lead tidier. Without him, our base would be a mess, so he's gotta stay. Mima, there's no even option. She's been here since close to the beginning. And could you really send your grandma to a black hole? Marie, another great shipper, and just kind of flies under the radar, so she's not it either. Nail falls under the same boat. He's essentially just a dupe to move around items. Nothing good, nothing bad, just gets the work done. Otto was meant to be a shipper, but he proved his worth as a cook and a machinist, so he'll stay also. Stinky, he is a possible candidate. He has piloted quite a few rockets, is a construction worker, can't dig, but does love space. And May falls into the same category. Been on a few missions, installed a ton of our shipping network. So honestly, I don't think she can go. She's done too much for this colony. So I guess for me, it's narrowed between P for memes, Bert because of his past transgressions and being the trouble child, and of course the most popular option, Rowan, the leader of the colony, the beacon of hope, the lead scientist to bring us out of the dark ages. Seems like he's the clear option to go. I couldn't decide on my own, so I asked for your guys' help and put a poll up, but it appears you all are as indecisive as me, and it was a tie. Since it's a tie, I guess I'll cast a deciding vote, and we're going with Rowan. Because honestly, it has been his mission the entire time. He's been set on the research path, done a lot of the rocket missions, and honestly, he's our guy. So now it's time for the hardest part of these 1000 days, saying goodbye to Rowan. From there, I let Rowan enjoy the little time he had left by doing what he wanted to. He ate his final dinner alone, trying to come to terms with the importance of his mission and how he would never see the other dupes he had known for 2.5 years ever again. His closest friends from his shift cheered him up, sharing one final meal together, reminiscing about all the work, accidents, and OSHA violations they've made. This made Ron feel a little bit better and confident that the dupes he was doing this mission for were worth it. He took a shower, cleansing all of his past uncertainties, and spent one final night with his girlfriend, P. They had spent so much time together, so many nights sat side by side, relaxing after a tough day, just to do it all over again. Rowan was a man on mission though, and knew he had to make the ultimate sacrifice. As he made his way to the rocket, he ran into Lindsay and Hassan, the other two dupes that started the colony with him. They started the Phoenix project for one purpose, to make a colony that had no dupe casualties, to atone for the failure of the first attempt. But this time, somebody would have to die. There was no time travel through saves coming, and no loophole to exploit. Lindsay and Hassan accepted this and went their separate way to run the colony in Rowan's absence. Rowan suited up for his final flight, going through the motions he's done hundreds of times. He's piloted many rockets in the pursuit of research, but this time was different. No chance of return, only a blind hope that what he was doing was worth it. He would never return to tell anyone his findings, but hopefully would find the answer to the mysteries of neutronium. And with no fear at all, entered the rocket. And there is our location. And with one click of a button, we lose our Rowan. Now that we're actually here, it's a little bit difficult, but it's something we have to do. And we never know what happens. We care about Rowan very deeply, and it's sad he's gone. But there is a bit of good news. Apparently, the 50 days I thought it would take for the rocket to reach the temporal tear were, in reality, instantly once I launched the rocket. And I got the achievement, so that means it is still possible to get all the achievements in the 1000 day timeline I set. There are only 3 achievements left, being taming all the critters with only the Gasimu left, and taming the Gasimu, which means I just need to tame the Gasimu to get both of them. Conveniently, I have left the Gasimus abandoned in the rocket for the last 30 days, so I just need to build a stable. For the last and final achievement, I need to get all my 20 dupes to do a task in an atmosuit for 10 consecutive days, which will be difficult and tedious, but I have a plan. All my dupes are no longer specialized to a certain task type. Any and all tasks are now free game to everyone. This way, I can set high priority tasks that require atmosuits and everyone will go to do them. Now, for the tasks that require atmosuits, this hydrogen vent was previously untamable because of its huge heat output, but with Thermium, I can build an indestructible gas pump to feed into some storage tanks that supply enough hydrogen to get a huge amount of power from a new hydrogen generator power plant. The Gasamus need a new airtight stable to call home, so the dupes can build it outside of the base. The polluted water storage has had problems of maxing out, so we now can double it. And for the final task, I recently discovered oil can be an infinite resource if I pump water into the oil wells, so that means running a huge long pipeline from my water reservoir. But the question is, how do I feed a pipe through this huge mess of pipes? Maybe a bend here, a loop there, and we have a solution. That should be more than enough build projects. So now with the plan in place, let's grab a save because I know things will not go right the first time. And I was sadly right. Things went horrendously wrong. An Oxygen Not Included day typically lasts 10 minutes and I have 4.5 hours of footage, almost 3 times longer than it should have taken. So let me take you through all my pain and suffering. On my end, I was doing everything right. My dupes did their tasks, the achievement said 20 out of 20 dupes did them, and as the day ticked over, it reset. Why did it reset? You just told me I was good. That's fine, I'll just reload the day and try again. This time, on red alert, so my dupes do twice the number of tasks. The achievement tells me I'm good, green check means you passed, but the next day, it failed. We reload again. I put some tasks on emergency status, still didn't work. Next attempt, I put every task under the sun as an emergency and it still didn't work. I loaded one final time with the smallest sliver of sanity left. Everything was an emergency. When my dupes hate me, oh yeah, but I did not care. They had to do their tasks so good, the game would accept it. And the day ticked over once more, and the consecutive days was now a 2 instead of a 1. I did absolutely nothing different, but it finally worked. I deprioritized the emergencies to a level 9 so the dupes wouldn't have mental breakdowns because that would not be good. We went through another day of tasks and of course it didn't work, so we tried once more. This time with everything on yellow priority, so urgent but not we are all going to die bad. This did not work. That naturally meant on the next attempt I set everything to red alert, and this time the day ran down to the very last second with 19 out of 20 dupes completing their tasks, so clearly I would have to reset. But I waited just to see if it worked, and surprisingly, in the last second, a dupe got their act together and did it. The next day, everything was set to yellow alert to give my dupes a slight break, and with 1 hour left in the day, they completed all their atmosuit tasks early. By this day, the hydrogen generator station was all built, and my dupes moved on to construct the Gasamu stable. This time, my colony was the problem. Only 17 of the 19 dupes did a task, and we failed, so that was a reload. But why did my dupes underperform? Well, my water reservoir's thermosensor was preventing water from being sent to the electrolyzers to be converted into oxygen, which was needed to run the atmosuits. With less atmosuits, less tasks could get done, so with the already buggy achievement, I needed to do as many tasks as possible. The quick fix was to shuffle the suits from the first few ports to the ones in the back with the oxygen stored up. This would be extremely tedious and heavily manual, but I had to make do. I was sure the stored up oxygen would eventually run out, but not today. I didn't make this change fast enough though, so that meant another relog, where I did everything exactly the same but faster. Check all the empty atmosuits on the ground and tell dupes to move them to the oxygenated ports, of course with the yellow priority to pressure my dupes into doing it with haste. This time, all my dupes did their tasks, I got the green check, Liam peed his pants, and the game took a dump on my hopes and dreams by forcing me to reset once again. I did the same atmosuit juggling, but even faster. There was no downtime at all. I could feel it worked this time. And it didn't. This next reload, I was happy to see the hydrogen generators were damaging themselves, because that meant even more tasks. Ashcan did some auto-tuning to push us over the task threshold. I took a save right at the end of the day, and of course, it bugged once more. So I reloaded it to this state with absolutely no time left in the day, so by all rights, the exact same as the last attempt should have happened, and it actually worked. I really want to know what wizardry BS is going on here, but if I spammed it enough, it seemed to work. No time to make sense of it though, because we were critically low on oxygen, so I tapped a vent to the liquefaction unit for the hydrogen rocket in hopes this new line would breathe some more life into the atmo ports. All these resets were also taking a toll on my dupes, with Camille struggling to choose a task as she stuttered in place. The dupes eventually snapped out of it, but it was a time loss I couldn't fix without redoing the schedule, so every task wasn't the same priority, which I would not be doing. I also removed the atmosuit stations at the entrance of the monument sanctuary because walking between the terminals wasn't a task, and I was wasting the very valuable oxygen because it was not included. Now they could just jump directly from the base to the sanctuary without having to put on an atmosuit. I lost track of time and the day ticked over, and I was greeted to a big fat 0, so I get to do all the blueprint placements for the vent system all over again. We made it to the end of the day once more, this time for sure with all the tasks met. So I made a save, titled it to threaten the game, and happily waited for the next day, and it failed. Another reload. This time I got distracted making the airlock for the gas and move stable, and checked a decent way into the next day to see it actually work. Thank goodness it did, because I did not want to redo the airlock again. I took no chances on day 996 and set it to red alert right away, which quickly got me the green check mark with half the day left. I made a save at the end, predicting it would probably not work, and it didn't as I predicted. This meant closing my bunker doors once again because a meteor shower came, even more atmosuit juggling, admiring my battery bank system, which was actually staying cool, and not checking if the achievement worked until a quarter of the way done with day 997. Luckily, it worked this time. So it seems I just need to not check it for about a quarter of a day, and it actually worked. Day 997, I finished the stable by adding the grooming station to tame the Gasimus, and a critter drop-off point to tell the dupes the Gasimus went there. All left to do was to remove the polluted oxygen from it, so I had a pure room I could harvest the natural gas the Gasimus would produce. And this time the atmosuit achievement actually worked first try for this day, so only 2 more days were left. Day 998, power was a huge problem as I saw most of my machines offline. I feel like the meteor shower that's been going on for the last 2 days is the reason why all those solar panels are down. What's the worst that could happen with the power? Well, I guess the atmosuit ports don't work, which could prevent us from getting the achievement. Oh, yeah. Apparently they can bar my dupes from accessing food, which is why Liam just died right there. Well, you know the drill. Reload the world, this time deactivate the port so my dupes weren't trapped and could leave without any atmosuit, making sure every dupe ate and didn't starve. Make a save to solidify Liam is alive, unbury the solar panels, release and wrangle the Gasimus, fret as our number of working atmosuit ports continue to dwindle, release the Gasimus to their stable home, and surprisingly see the atmosuit achievement for the day was actually completed. Only 1 more day of atmosuit task was left, and I knew we could do it. For this day, Hassan started with grooming the Gasimus for the other 2 achievements. I really hope 2 days was enough time to tame them because we did not have any more than that. I discovered my plastic ladders literally melted at the oil fissure, so that was pretty neat. And the molten slickster population was down to 1 with a few eggs, so they're doing alright considering I've neglected them for 250 days. As the end of day 999 approached, the achievement said it was met, so I made a final save, set everything to red alert because I was taking no chances, and I actually got the atmosuit achievement before it turned to day 1000. Never in my life have I had so many issues with the achievement, aside from the entire game of Raft, but that's a story for another day. I finally did it at the cost of my entire colony being mostly unfunctional. Oxygen was very sparse, dupes are stressed, but we have 2 final achievements and 1 day to do it, so no time to worry about the well-being of the colony. I let all my dupes clean up the asteroid mess on the surface and all the P spots from the red alerts, while Hassan tamed the Gasimus. Before I knew it, the whole day passed and still no achievements. As it ticked over to day 1001, I looked at how wild they were, and it was at 3% away. 3%. As I watched their wildness tick down, I had to accept I failed. Did I get all of the achievements? Yes, but not by day 1000. Now, the question was Would I go back 3 days and get the gassy moves moved in earlier? Heck no. I would have to relive power outages, suit juggling, no oxygen, dupe starving, and more. I was content with getting all the achievements on one save file, which was an accomplishment enough for me. Some may say this is a letdown and the video thumbnail is a lie because it's ending on day 1001. Well, what if I told you I've been lying to you this whole time? This is Rowan, and the entire rocket launch to the temporal tear was staged just like the moon landing. So let me take you back to cycle 872, where I hatched the Phoenix Project protocol. You see, I care about all my dupes. I've built bonds with them, forged from the terror of possibly losing them. They may not be the smartest or the most capable, and sometimes they may almost destroy the colony. But over time, I developed a bond with them, and I really cared about them. So there had to be a way not to sacrifice any of the dupes I can. Because honestly, what kind of an ending to this series would it be if I let that happen? So now the question is, how do you go about sending a dupe to not return without sending a dupe? Well, it's actually quite simple. And it starts with this nifty printing pod. You remember Dark Rowan? Well, I found out we can have him spawn anytime we want. While other Rowan was out on a star mission, I went to work reloading the game, which then resets the spawn pod and who's in it. And I did that until Rowan showed up. But not our Rowan, a new Rowan, a different Rowan. A Rowan I could train to fulfill his one purpose of going to the great beyond. So we printed him out, welcomed him to our colony, and the first thing we did, we hired him for a specific reason. And we need his skills to fall in line with that. And if he wasn't able to become a rocket man, as this Rowan wasn't quite able to, so he was disposed of, and the search continued. Now, it was no easy task searching for the perfect Rowan, because we needed one to level up fast and be able to fly the rocket. At this point, I was still under the assumption I needed to set aside 55 days for the rocket to reach the temporal tear. Given our 128 days left before cycle 1000, that left Rowan 2 with 73 days to gain the 8 skills required to be able to fly the rocket. That means he would have to gain a skill point every 9 days. That seems feasible until you consider the last dupe we accepted, Otto, who was accepted on cycle 663 and over that time has averaged a skill point every 16 cycles, not nearly fast enough to reach the deadline. I could save some time by using the mission control station, but would still need to utilize a fairly inhumane method of skill farming, where I needed a dupe that was already skilled in machinery and athletic tasks. I cycled through many Rowans in my search. Humble Farmer Rowan, Strongman Rowan, Flexianus, Overjoyed Jumping Bean Rowan, Pondering Rowan, and finally, the chosen one, the one we would call Rowan 2. He was naturally strong, athletic, and had the greasy monkey trait to boost his speed at operation tasks. So Rowan 2 was accepted and sent to his dungeon for the next 75 days. A luxuriously spacious house fit for a millennial, fully kitted with a bathroom, human-sized hamster wheel, a dingy old cot infested with bugs, and a refrigerator to store food. So, how does this encourage him to grind out skill points? That's the fun part. For starters, he's trapped in this room. I set the door to only allow him to enter and never leave. All he could do was grind out skill points. That's why he has his own personal restroom and refrigerator that Nail, P, and Marie will keep stocked so he doesn't starve. Now that he is locked in here and won't die, where do the skill points come from? Well, of course, the hamster wheel. The hamster wheels usually generate power that is stored in a battery to keep the lights on. Well, this one has no battery, so there will always be a task for Rowan to power the light bulb that will never stay lit unless, like Sisyphus, he's stuck doing the same task forever. This task is useful because it gives both machinery and athletic skill points, so he is leveling the 2 tasks he excels at simultaneously. With everything in place, I let him do this for the next 75 days. But first, I had to run a vent of oxygen to his room because apparently carbon dioxide wasn't breathable. But now, I could let him grind for the next 75 days and hope it worked. Those days weren't easy for Rowan 2. He went from 3 friends he saw every day to only 1. Marie and P refused to go see him because the idea of an exact copy of the original Rowan was wrong in their eyes. I respected their wishes and took them off of the refrigerator supply task, leaving only Nail to take care of Rowan. This worked in both their favors. Nail was accepted relatively late to the colony and felt outcast from the older dupes. But ever since Rowan 2 came to the colony, Nail gained a gleam of happiness in his eyes. happy to spend any time with Rowan 2, even when he was trying to sleep. He brought Rowan 2 a shiny moldavite rock to brighten his room, and even ate dinner with him every single night. Mima also decided to join the rambunctious duo. They all enjoyed their time together. But there were also the bad times. When the colony experienced its food famine, Rowan 2 also did. His refrigerator was completely depleted, but all he could do was grind his task, unable to leave his room. Lucky for him, Nail had his back and brought him enough food to keep him going before filling the refrigerator to the brim with the help of Meemaw. There was also the massive power outage that threatened to spoil the food in our refrigerators. But that crisis wasn't averted because of my building efforts of the new power generators. It was instead solved by routing the power Rowan 2 was producing for the light bulb to power all the refrigerators. He single-handedly saved the colony from starvation, and most of the dupes didn't even know he existed. The planned launch date of 950 came and passed, but Rowan 2 still trained, and eventually got the last skill point required on day 963. All left to do now was to send him to the skill scrubber to reassign the skills all into rocket flight. I let him leave his dungeon for the first time, and the first thing he did was look at his first source of light that wasn't his self-powered light bulb. Then he took a shower for the first time to wash the 90 days worth of sweat from running. He then got shook around in the skill scrubber to forget his life he had known for the last 90 days and emerged a blank slate I could teach everything he needed to know about flying a rocket. With his newfound knowledge and extreme dedication, he had earned the right to wear the signature Rowan hat and live with the other dupes of the colony while the hydrogen rocket was being built. And this time, he helped construct the Rowan Monument Sanctuary and even made friends with the other dupes, including Marie, who had initially despised him. Over the next 26 days, a split in the colony formed between the Rowan and the Rowan 2 supporters, and it all came to a head when it was time to launch the rocket to the Temporal Tear. The only difference between the Rowans was the jazzy blue sweater that the OG Rowan wore. That was quickly changed with the help of Ren. As a doctor, he sided with Rowan 2, amazed by the existence of the clone and his capacity to act the same as every other dupe. So, he used his artistic talent to sew another jazzy sweater that Rowan 2 hastily put on. The two of them were indistinguishable from each other, and I had to decide who to launch to the Temporal Tear. So I told both of them to suit up and get ready for the launch. The OG Rowan did his goodbyes while Rowan 2 did the same, saying goodbye to Bonhee, Meemaw, and especially Nail. Nail was about to lose best friend, but knew it was what Rowan 2 had worked tirelessly for the last 100 cycles. He cherished the time they had shared and accepted either outcome of the launch. So, it came down to me deciding at the launch platform which one's the real Rowan. There's no way to tell them apart. If we send the wrong Rowan, who's going to be happy? Who's going to be sad? For 10 seconds, they stared at each other, neither knowing what to do. True Rowan knew who True Rowan was, but ultimately it wasn't up to the Rowans to decide. The launch button was in my hand. Which one was which? It's a 50-50 chance. Either we send our real Rowan, or we send the fake Rowan. And on that slim chance, I made my decision. And as time was unfrozen, our Rowan went into the rocket. Unsure of what decision I had made, I sent it. But honestly, at this point, which Rowan was the real Rowan? They both are intellectual geniuses that have saved the colony, and without either of their help, we wouldn't have gotten all the achievements in time. It's a shame it took me up until the rocket was already launched to realize this, but my blind decision has been made, and all left to do is hope. Hope the Rowan sent to the Temporal Tear can find a paradise universe to call home, and hope the Rowan back at the colony will continue leading it to a brighter future. It was later found out the Rowan left on the asteroid was indeed the original. He had a huge abundance of skills that Rowan 2 could not have accumulated in the time. With a new sense of urgency, he set off, leading the colony into the future. It took a lot of time, but the colony has become a perfectly automated paradise where the dupes spend more time relaxing than doing tasks. There's no longer a threat of dupes dying, so the main mission of the Phoenix Project has been met, and I can now take my leave of the colony and let it function on its own for eons to come, with the dupes living in peace and tranquility. The journey of the colony was a hard one, built on the ashes of our failed attempts, every time learning from our mistakes and making a colony that functioned better than the last. As I saw it grow from this small little portal planted in the middle, I knew we could call this asteroid home, a home for the dupes that have served me tirelessly, as their influence spread across the asteroid, claiming every raw resource as their own to fuel our expansion at an exponential rate, until there was no more expansion to do, and the dupes could lay back and rest as I took my leave. Goodbyes are always sad, Ron, but we always have the journey to look back on that I was able to share with everyone still watching. This journey has been a long one for me. In total, I played the game for over 300 hours across the span of 3 months, and I wanted to make my journey into a video. The editing to make all this happen took me 6 months, which I enjoyed most of the time, but at a few moments wondered why I took on such a big project. Now that I'm at the end, I'm glad it happened and I was able to tell my story of a little colony on an asteroid that by all means should have failed. If you missed any part of the series, here's a playlist with all of them in order. If you want an in-depth tour of how the colony functions completely automatically, I'll have a roll tour video here when it's made. Thanks again for watching my video and consider subscribing to not miss the future projects I have planned.